So everyone has some classification of different kinds of risks, with somewhere there's misuse and somewhere there's misalignment and somewhere there's everything else. I'm really talking about the everything else because that's what I think it's important when we're talking about what could we do in terms of evaluation if we had AGIs or something that could scale toward AGI. That's what I mean to talk about. Anyway, this is about systemic risks or destabilization risks. People were calling them a minute ago, earlier yesterday. So the canonical example is social media. We say after social media became widespread, had some kind of delayed effect on the world because it was mediated through people changing their behavior. It's not just like the technology itself had this effect. It's like the technology went out and it was used in some way, and then people changed their behavior, and that changed the world in a way that was maybe just undesirable. Obviously we are running another experiment now where we're introducing new powerful technologies, and this is also going to catalyze new social organization. People are going to change their behavior in response to this technology. This has already started. Even if the technology doesn't improve anymore, which obviously won't happen, it's already the case that there are new affordances that people have, and they're going to have some effect on the world. We're going to change the equilibrium that we're in. And so more changes in society is coming, regardless of whether the technology continues to improve. The kind of changes I'm thinking about are not slow exactly. They're driven by positive feedback dynamics, so they can be fast in the sense of human behavior fast. This isn't like a FOOM fast of like the AI kind of building itself and then overnight being in a completely different world, but it's still fast in the sense of like it's humans changing their behavior on the time scale at which humans change their behavior. Like we're talking maybe months or a small number of years, kind of you can end up in a very, very different world. The reason it's fast in this way is because it's positive feedback changes. Like the more people who change their behavior, the more incentive there is for others to change their behavior. Examples on the slide. Other things are like this too, where the stability of the system can be affected by technology. One example I like to talk about is like fishery maintenance kind of stuff, where you could have a fishery that is perfectly sustainable when everyone is fishing with nets, but if you then introduce some other technology like dynamite or something, then it becomes an unsustainable practice. So this is actually very common. There's a lot of people who study the stability of social ecological systems and how they're affected by technology or choices in use of technology. And here's another example that's a bit more AI-like and less catastrophic. It's if you know some area where there's it's hard to get a reservation for dinner. I always tell the story about Granary Square in London. If people have been there, you might be then motivated to have your AI assistant go make a whole bunch of reservations for you, and then you say like, oh, I don't know which ones are going to work, but then I'll just make all the reservations, then I'll pick out of the ones that actually worked. And then maybe everyone adopts this strategy. And the problem with that is, of course, that then the restaurants will be wise to that, and they'll be like, oh, okay, we're not going to allow you to keep canceling reservations if everyone does that, right? Maybe it's okay if one person did it, but as soon as everyone does that, it has to change the equilibrium, right? They have to stop taking reservations, say, over the phone, or they have to make it so there's a cancellation fee or whatever. There's just a new equilibrium where it's no longer possible to make reservations in the same way. So here's an example where an AI assistant changes the way a system works. I'm calling these the kind of risk that we've identified here an equilibrium selection risk, where there's some convention or norm or institution in our that's regulating our lives, and it's dependent in ways that we might not immediately know in advance on things like the costs of taking different actions. Like if something becomes much easier than it was, like the example with the restaurant booking, it's just much easier to make lots and lots of calls and make lots of reservations and then cancel them all. In principle, a person could have done that before, but it would have been costly and no one would have done it. And the only thing that was supporting the equilibrium was the fact that that was a costly thing, but it's not now. More consequential examples are like, well, now we can easily, any one of us can produce endless misinformation to whatever agenda we like. So the cost of taking this action is just much lower now. So the question is something about the equilibrium that we're all in dependent on that, the cost of that action being where it was, and now going to be destabilized by the change. So of course, I'm using the language of game theory. You can understand this in a game theoretic way. I only have a minute, so I won't really say that. But in a game like that, you can if you start out in the blue equilibrium there, the 2-2-1, you could say there's both an equilibrium risk of moving to the 1-1 equilibrium and an equilibrium opportunity of moving to the 3-3 equilibrium, which would be better. And we should think about both of those possibilities. I talked about AGI-Complete Evaluation. So like, what could we do in terms of an evaluation framework that would kind of get better and better as we get better and better AI? Because I think that's kind of what we need here. And I will not say anything about it. I will say basically that agent-based modeling, I think, is the thing to do. We should do agent-based modeling because the agents themselves will get better, and so we can simulate more about the world and we can understand more. It's not just about simulating the whole world and hoping things work out. There are principles, and everyone should read Elinor Ostrom, and I'll stop.